Most people believe the path to their first $100,000 runs through finding the right investment, the right opportunity, the right moment to strike. They've got it completely backwards. The people who actually reach this milestone and reach it quickly share three characteristics that have nothing to do with market timing or stock picks. They're passionate about being rational. They stay eager and opportunistic, and they consistently underspend their income, grossly underspend it, in ways that would make their neighbors uncomfortable. What separates someone who hits $100,000 from someone who spends a decade trying to get ahead isn't intelligence or luck. It's a willingness to change who they are at the core, to become the kind of person for whom wealth accumulation is simply what they do, not something they're attempting. Here's the math most people don't want to hear. You cannot invest your way to $100,000 in 12 months. You must earn and save your way there. Putting away $2,000 a month gets you $24,000 in a year, which means the remaining $76,000 has to come from income expansion, selling assets you don't need, or a far more aggressive savings rate. What I'm laying out today is the exact framework, month by month, for how ordinary people accumulate their first $100,000 using the most boring, most reliable, most overlooked method in wealth building history. Spend less than you earn, invest shrewdly, and sidestep the standard stupidities that keep most people broke their entire lives. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is a get-rational-slowly plan. And getting rational slowly happens to be one of the most powerful things a human being can do. People completely misunderstand what they're attempting when they set a financial goal. They think the goal is the money, but it isn't. The real goal is proving to yourself and no one else that you can control your behavior for 12 consecutive months. That's the entire game right there. Pull that off, and you've built what I call a habit machine. And once the habit machine starts running, the next decade becomes almost inevitable. Someone who controls their behavior for 1 year can do it for 2, and the person who manages 2 years can handle 10. 10 years of controlled behavior makes you wealthy, whether you planned on it or not. Now here's something uncomfortable that needs to be said directly. $100,000 in a single year isn't realistic for everyone. If your annual income sits at $30,000, you're not saving $100,000 in 12 months, because that would require putting away more than 300% of your income, which violates basic arithmetic. But here's what holds true for everyone. The method works at any income level. Earn more, waste less, invest steadily. These three actions applied with consistency build wealth from any starting point. The gap between someone earning $30,000 and someone earning $150,000 isn't the method, it's the timeline. One person reaches the milestone in 18 months, while another takes 5 years, but both of them get there if they stick to the system. What kills most people isn't their income, it's their impatience. They want the result without the process and the destination without the journey, so they chase shortcuts that end up costing them years. Wealthy people aren't the ones who found shortcuts. They're the ones who committed to doing simple things correctly for a long time. Spend less than you make. Always save something. Put it into a tax advantage account, and over time it will start to amount to something. This advice is so obvious, I'm almost embarrassed saying it out loud, but I say it because almost nobody actually does it. Here's an observation that has served me well over many years. Most people don't need genius. They need fewer dumb decisions. The fastest way to $100,000 often isn't adding fancy strategies. It's subtracting mistakes. A remarkable amount of long-term advantage is available to people who simply try to be consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent. Think about that for a moment. Brilliance isn't required. You just have to stop doing idiotic things. Warren Buffett and I have discussed this for decades. We aren't smarter than most professional investors. We've simply gotten very good at tuning out standard stupidities and have left more talented, more diligent people in the dust by working hard at eliminating standard errors. What counts as standard stupidity when it comes to building wealth? First on the list is high-interest debt. Once debt gets its hooks in you, escaping becomes hellish. Never let credit card balances carry over from month to month, because you cannot get ahead while paying 18% interest. A 12-year-old could verify that math, yet millions of adults ignore it every single month. Second is lifestyle creep. Every time income increases, expenses mysteriously climb at the same rate. A raise arrives and suddenly you need a better car, a bigger apartment, a fancier vacation. This isn't a financial problem, it's a psychological problem, and psychological problems require psychological solutions. Third is the permanent car payment. I've watched people stay broke their entire lives because a car payment never left their budget. They finish paying off one vehicle and immediately finance another, treating transportation as a permanent monthly expense rather than a temporary cost that should eventually disappear. Fourth, and this one destroys more wealth than almost anything else, is gambling disguised as investing. Day trading is not investing. Cryptocurrency speculation is not investing. Buying options because someone online called it a sure thing is not investing. These activities are gambling, and the house always wins in gambling. Here's what being aversive to standard stupidities actually requires. Not intelligence, but honesty about what you don't know, and discipline about what you do know. People try to be smart. All I'm trying to do is not be idiotic. And it turns out that not being idiotic is harder than most people realize. The math that makes $100,000 possible isn't complicated, but it demands honesty with yourself. Wealth accumulation has only 3 variables. First is your savings rate, the percentage of income you keep, not what you earn, but what you keep. Second is income expansion, whether you can increase what comes in through better skills, extra work, or a higher paying position. Third is time, and for our purposes, that means 12 months of consistency. Now here are some paths you can actually walk. Saving and investing $2,000 a month puts you at $24,000 in a year. Good start, but that's only a quarter of the way there, which means the rest has to come from income growth, selling things you own but don't need, or pushing the savings rate higher. Saving $4,000 monthly gets you to $48,000, almost halfway. Someone earning $120,000 a year who manages to save 50% of gross income, extreme but not impossible, ends up with $60,000 in savings and still needs $40,000 more. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people cannot invest their way to $100,000 in 12 months. Stock market returns, historically, land somewhere around 7 to 10% annually after inflation. Starting with $10,000 and getting a 10% return leaves you with $11,000 at year's end. That's pleasant, but it's nowhere near $100,000. The only way to reach this goal in 1 year is to out-earn and out-save. Investment returns are a bonus, not the engine. Some of you are running the numbers right now and thinking this seems impossible for your situation. Maybe it is in 1 year, but what about 2 years? What about 3? The principle stays the same. Only the timeline adjusts to your reality. And here's something most people fail to grasp. The first $100,000 is hard precisely because there's no momentum behind you. You're pushing a boulder from a dead stop. But once $100,000 sits in your account, something strange happens. Earning 8% on that money generates $8,000 annually in investment returns, money that appeared without you lifting a finger. That $8,000 grows into more money, which earns more returns, and suddenly the snowball starts rolling downhill. This is why reaching $100,000 matters so much. The number itself isn't the point. Crossing the threshold where your money starts working as hard as you do is the point. Here's something that will save you years of frustration. Don't chase side hustles you don't understand. Brilliant people destroy their finances by operating outside their circle of competence all the time. They hear about someone making money in real estate and jump in knowing nothing about it. They hear about profits from an online business and start one with no relevant skills. They chase whatever's hot instead of asking a simple question. What do I actually know how to do? You have to figure out your own aptitudes. Playing games where other people have the aptitudes and you don't guarantees losing, and that's as close to certain as any prediction can get. You have to figure out where you've got an edge and play within your own circle of competence. Here's what that means when it comes to increasing income. Pick 1 or 2 income moves that are boring but reliable. The first option is overtime or extra shifts if your current job offers them. This is money earned using skills you already possess, in an environment you already understand. No learning curve, no startup costs, just more hours exchanged for more dollars. The second option is developing one high-value skill. Sales, a trade like plumbing or electrical work, operations management, technical support, bookkeeping. None of these are glamorous, but they pay well because they require competence and reliability. Two qualities most people struggle to deliver consistently. The third option is getting a better job offer using the same skills you already have. Many people are dramatically underpaid simply because they've never researched what the market actually pays for their skills. Same competence, different employer, higher income. Here's the rule worth remembering. If you can't explain how something works, don't bet your year on it. Becoming the best plumbing contractor in your city is probably an attainable objective. It takes will and intelligence, but after a while, you'd gradually know everything about the plumbing business and master the craft. People who could never win a chess tournament can rise quite high in life by slowly developing a circle of competence, which results partly from what they were born with and partly from what they develop through work. The goal isn't finding a clever shortcut. The goal is becoming so good at something that people pay well for it. That takes time, and time is something you have. What you don't have is unlimited tolerance for stupid mistakes. A single bad decision can kill your $100,000 year. Most people obsess over small expenses. They fixate on coffee and feel guilty about a $10 lunch while making one large decision that sets them back 5 years. Here are the decisions that actually matter. A new car brings an average payment now exceeding $700 monthly. That's $8,400 annually, just in payments, not counting insurance, maintenance, and fuel. Buying a new car every 4 years commits you to over $30,000 in payments alone. An expensive rent upgrade follows a similar pattern. A raise arrives, so a nicer apartment beckons. The nicer apartment costs $600 more per month, which is $7,200 annually that could have been invested. Over 10 years with compound growth, that single decision costs you more than $100,000. Big vacations, financed with future. You please credit card companies enormously. The vacation is unaffordable now, but surely future you will handle the bill. Future you is always disappointed. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your biggest expenses decide your financial future, not your small daily purchases. I'm not saying never buy a car, never take a vacation. I'm saying understand the true cost of these decisions. Not just the sticker price, but the opportunity cost of money that could have been compounding for decades. Friends who got wealthy often built fancy houses, and in practically every case it made them less happy rather than more. The expensive house brought expensive maintenance, expensive property taxes, expensive furniture to fill it, and expensive anxiety about keeping it all together. Meanwhile, some of the happiest wealthy people I know live in modest homes they've owned for decades. They didn't upgrade because they didn't need to, and that discipline is what made them wealthy in the first place. If reaching $100,000 in a year matters to you, make housing and transportation decisions based on mathematics rather than status. The person driving a 10-year-old paid-off car to a modest apartment is building wealth. The person driving a new financed car to an upgraded apartment is building debt. Same income, different trajectory. Building a financial system that doesn't depend on motivation matters because your motivation is unreliable. The goal is creating what I call an anti-fragile system. Something automatic, something boring, something that works even when you don't feel like working. The first component is automated transfers on payday. Before you see the money, before you can spend it, before you can rationalize why this month is different, the money moves to savings and investments automatically. Decision-making gets removed from the equation and you can't spend what you never see. The second component is cash reserves for emergencies. Keep enough liquid cash that unexpected expenses never force you into debt. Cars break down, roofs leak, jobs disappear for 3 months. These things happen, and without a cash buffer, each emergency becomes a financial catastrophe that sets you back years. The third component is steady investment in simple, diversified vehicles. Something you can hold through bad headlines. Something requiring no daily monitoring. Something boring enough that you won't be tempted to tinker with it. Here's what you must avoid. No leverage. Using borrowed money to invest is how smart people go broke. It works wonderfully until it doesn't, and when it doesn't, it can take everything. No day trading. Day trading isn't investing. It's gambling with extra steps. The data is clear. The vast majority of day traders lose money over time, and the only consistent winners are brokers collecting fees on every trade. No chasing the next thing. Every year brings a new investment that everyone's talking about. It's going to change everything. It's going to make early investors rich. And every year, most of these things fail, leaving behind people who bet money they couldn't afford to lose. The desire to get rich fast is dangerous because it leads people to take risks that no rational person would take after thinking carefully about the mathematics. What actually works is boring consistency. Invest the same amount every month, regardless of what the market is doing. Don't try to time it. Don't try to outsmart it. Just keep showing up. Compound interest works for a reason. It rewards patience. The first rule of compounding is never interrupt it unnecessarily. Every panic sale, every hot tip chased, every attempt at being clever interrupts the compounding. Plenty of people with high IQs make terrible investors because they have terrible temperaments. You need patience, discipline, and the ability to absorb losses and adversity without going crazy. An old problem-solving approach has served me well my entire life. Invert the problem. Instead of asking how to succeed at something, ask how you would guarantee failure, then avoid those things. So here's the question. How do people fail at building wealth in the first 30 days? The first way is trying to do everything at once. They decide to cut all expenses, increase income, start investing, learn about the stock market, begin a side business, and optimize taxes, all in the same week. This overwhelms them, and overwhelmed people quit. The second way is relying on motivation. Motivation is a temporary emotion that feels powerful in the moment, but vanishes when circumstances change. Anyone depending on motivation stays enthusiastic for 2 weeks, then reverts to old patterns when life gets hard. The third way is telling friends. This sounds counterintuitive, but announcing goals often satisfies the psychological need for achievement without actual achievement. Social approval for the intention reduces the drive to earn approval for the result. The fourth way is chasing high returns instead of a high savings rate. Someone earning $50,000 annually decides their path to wealth is finding investments that return 40%. This is fantasy. Meanwhile, they ignore the fact that saving an extra $500 monthly would have a bigger impact than any realistic investment return. The fifth way is keeping one leak open. They cut expenses everywhere except one area. The car payment stays, the daily restaurant lunch stays, the subscription stack stays. That one leak drains the bucket faster than they can fill it. I want to know where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. That's not a joke. It's a strategy. Figure out how people fail, then avoid doing those things. If you want to guarantee failure at building wealth, here's the prescription. Be impatient, be emotional, be inconsistent, and refuse to live below your means. Do those 4 things and poverty becomes almost certain. The person who inverts this prescription, who is patient, rational, consistent, and disciplined about spending, has stacked the odds so heavily in their favor that success becomes almost inevitable. Here's a month-by-month structure. Simple things work when you do them consistently. Month 1, stop the bleeding. Your only job this month is eliminating waste. Cancel subscriptions that go unused. Stop impulse purchases. If high-interest debt exists, make a plan to attack it. Don't try anything else. Just plug the holes in your bucket. Most people leak money in dozens of small ways they don't even notice. Recurring charges they forgot about. Conveniences they could live without. Small purchases that add up to large amounts. This month, you find every leak and close it. Months 2 and 3, increase income. Once the bleeding stops, focus on what's coming in. Ask for a raise. If your employer declines, start looking for better opportunities elsewhere. If overtime is available, take it. If you have a skill people will pay for, find someone willing to pay. This isn't about working yourself to death. It's about a focused 2-month push to improve earning capacity. Intense effort for 60 days is sustainable. Intense effort forever, while also cutting expenses and optimizing investments and learning new skills is not. One thing at a time. Months 4 through 6, lock the system. Now you automate. Set up automatic transfers so savings happen without your involvement. Build the emergency fund until it covers 3 to 6 months of expenses. Begin steady, consistent investing in something simple and diversified. By the end of month 6, the goal is a system that runs without you. Money comes in, gets allocated, gets invested, all automatically. Your job is simply not interfering. Months 7 through 12, repeat without drama. The remaining 6 months require the least effort and the most discipline. You don't change the system. You don't optimize. You don't chase new opportunities. You execute week after week, month after month. Track progress weekly. Not because tracking changes anything, but because it keeps you aware. Awareness prevents drift. People who reach their financial goals aren't the ones who found a better strategy halfway through. They're the ones who stuck to a decent strategy all the way through. No drama, no heroics, just repetition. The mindset that makes all of this possible deserves attention, because without the right mindset, even the best system fails. This isn't about being smarter than the market. The market has millions of participants, many of them brilliant, all of them searching for an edge. You aren't going to outsmart them. This is about being more rational than your weaker self. Every person has a weaker self, a version that wants immediate gratification, feels entitled to comfort now, regardless of the cost later, makes emotional decisions, and rationalizes them afterward. Eliminating this weaker self is impossible, so that's not your job. Building systems that protect you from this weaker self is your job. Automatic savings protect against the urge to spend. Simple investment strategies protect against the urge to speculate. Living below your means protects against lifestyle creep. Being rational is a moral imperative. You should never be stupider than you need to be, yet most people remain far stupider than necessary simply because they never put systems in place to counteract their own irrationality. If you want $100,000, you must stop acting like someone who spends it before earning it. This sounds obvious, but watch how most people behave. Excitement about a purchase leads to buying before saving the money. Financing things they don't need becomes normal. Future income gets treated as current income. They spend money they haven't earned on things they don't need to impress people they don't like. Wealth builders do the opposite. They wait. They save first and spend second. They treat money with respect, as if it represents hours of their life, which it does. Here's something uncomfortable but true. Most people's financial problems aren't technical problems. They're character problems, and character problems require character solutions. Spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up, day by day, and at the end of the day, if you live long enough, you will get out of life what you deserve. The real reason the first 100,000 is so hard has nothing to do with mathematics. The first 100,000 requires an identity change. You cannot become wealthy while maintaining the identity of someone who is poor because the behaviors are incompatible. Poor people and wealthy people make different decisions, not because wealthy people are smarter, but because they see themselves differently. When you identify as someone who builds wealth, different choices follow automatically. The new car loses its appeal because it doesn't fit who you are. The luxury apartment feels wrong because you're someone who invests, not someone who consumes. Lifestyle inflation becomes nearly impossible because your identity rejects it. This identity shift is uncomfortable. It demands seeing yourself differently than you have for your entire life. It demands rejecting behaviors that friends, family, and society insist are normal and acceptable. But once the shift happens, something remarkable occurs. Discipline becomes unnecessary because the new behavior is simply who you are. I constantly see people rise in life who are not the smartest and sometimes not even the most diligent, but they're learning machines. They go to bed every night a little wiser than when they woke up. And over time, this compounds just like money. The person you become on the way to your first 100,000 is more valuable than the 100,000 itself, because that person can earn the second 100,000 faster, and the third faster still. Understanding what happens after reaching 100,000 makes the present sacrifice worthwhile. Once you have 100,000, the game changes. You've crossed the threshold. Your money is now a worker that shows up every day, never complains, and earns more money while you sleep. At a modest return, 100,000 generates thousands in investment income annually. That income reinvests, which generates more income, which reinvests again. The second 100,000 arrives faster than the first. The third arrives faster than the second. This is the magic of compounding, and it only works for people who reach the first milestone. But here's what matters most about why this is worth pursuing. The goal isn't applause, the goal is independence. Like many people who build wealth, what drove me wasn't the desire for expensive things. It was the desire for independence. I desperately wanted independence because I thought it was undignified having to send invoices to other people and depend on others for financial survival. Independence means saying no to work that violates your values. It means surviving a job loss without panic. It means making decisions based on what's right rather than what pays the bills this month. Most people never experience true independence because they consume everything they earn. They're always one paycheck away from crisis, always dependent on their employer's goodwill, always vulnerable to circumstances beyond their control. The first 100,000 is the first real step toward independence. Not complete independence, that requires more, but the beginning of it. The proof that escape is possible. The path to $100,000 isn't complicated. Earn more than you spend. Invest the difference. Avoid stupid mistakes. Repeat for 12 months. The difficulty isn't intellectual because a child could understand the mathematics. The difficulty is behavioral. It requires delaying gratification. It requires saying no to things you want now in exchange for things you want more later. It requires being rational in a world that rewards irrationality, something that took decades to understand. Thinking about problems forward isn't enough. You must also think in reverse. The great mathematician Carl Jacobi became known for constantly repeating one phrase: invert, always invert. So invert your question. Instead of asking how to get wealthy, ask how to stay poor. The answers are obvious. Spend more than you earn. Ignore compound interest. Make emotional decisions. Chase quick returns. Finance things you can't afford. And never develop skills that people will pay premium prices for. Now simply don't do those things. The hard part of getting your first 100,000 from a standing start is that it requires sustained effort with no immediate reward. But people who push through this phase, who soldier on through the difficult early years, find that the next phase becomes dramatically easier. Wisdom acquisition is a moral duty. It isn't something you do just to advance in life. It is a moral duty, and there's a corollary to that proposition, which is very important. It means you're hooked for lifetime learning. The person who learns a little every day about money, about discipline, about rationality, that person cannot help but become wealthy over time, not because they found a trick, not because they got lucky, but because they slowly, patiently, deliberately eliminated the stupidities that keep most people poor. Go to bed tonight a little wiser than you were when you woke up. Do it tomorrow and the day after. And if you live long enough, like most people, you will get out of life exactly what you deserve. You only have to get rich once. Do it right the first time.